Barakatay Hawa, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakakudash. Welcome to another live lesson. This one is a discussion about Ron Dalton Jr. and the Chariots. And I know brothers have been doing lessons on this particular subject. And I didn't really get a chance to watch a whole lot of them. I saw that some of them were up. And I didn't get a chance to watch any of them, but a thought came to mind, while I was listening to this guy on Elder Pastor's video that he did concerning this whole situation, how he thinks every time you read about the chariots, a chariot or chariots in the scriptures is talking about a horse and buggy. And what he does is he goes to the Hebrew, as we do. I wonder where he got that from. And pretty much he'll use that to say that everywhere you see the word chariot, it's talking about the so-called UFOs. And that's not the case. It all depends on the content or context of the scripture. And I just wanted to say a few words on it, as long as the Spirit allows me to. I know brothers have done, like I said, lessons on it. And brothers probably already covered the point that that came to me that I wanted to touch on. And like I said, we're just going to get right into it. Because when you read the scriptures, you have parts of the scriptures that are physical, so to speak. And you have parts of the scriptures that are spiritual. And you have to be able to discern between the two. This is why it says that the carnal man cannot receive the things of the Spirit because they are spiritually discerned. And if they are spiritually discerned, that means that you won't be able to get it unless the Lord opens up your spiritual mind to receive it. This is why Yahushua asked the disciples, who do the people say I am? They said, some say you're John, some say you're Jeremiah, others, some of the other prophets. And then he asked them, who do you say I am? And they said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the Most High. And then what did he say? Blessed are you, Peter, for flesh and blood have not revealed this unto you, but my Father, which is in heaven. And then the apostle, he told Nicodemus, a man can receive nothing except he receive it from heaven. So you're either going to be able to see it or not. It's the same concept as when we read the scriptures about the voice that spoke to Yahushua, which was the Most High Yahweh, and also the situation with the Apostle Paul, where he saw, Yahushua, and he actually heard the voice speaking to him, and others heard thundering, just like when the Most High spoke and said, "This is my beloved Son." Some heard the voice, some heard thunderings. So that is pretty much the analogy of those that are spiritually minded and those that are carnally minded. And that's the same thing with any other scriptures that we read. Sometimes they're physical, sometimes they're spiritual, So let's get into it. The main precept I want to go into is 2 Kings. Like I said, I'm pretty sure somebody already covered this point, but it's just something that came to mind and I wanted to go over. So we're going to start here, 2 Kings 2:10. This is, of course, when Elijah was about to be taken away from Elisha, and he was following him around. Elijah kept telling him, to go back, wait for him at such and such place, and he said, nah, forget about that, because he knew that the Lord was going to take him, and he wanted to be there to witness that. Even the prophet said it, and he told him to be quiet. He already knew. So 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 10, it says, and he said, thou hast asked a hard thing, because Elijah asked, Elisha, what do you want me to give you? I'll be leaving today. What do you want me to give you? He said, a double portion of your spirit. So he said, you have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou seest me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire. So you mean to tell me that in the heavens there was an actual cart with wheels on it, a buggy that was actually on fire up in the heavens, and horses of fire, and horses that were pulling this chariot that was on fire, and the horses were on fire too, up in the heavens, running across the heavens. No, this is talking about the chariots of the Lord, which the world calls UFOs, UAPs, so on and so forth. That's why when we read Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter, it speaks about that they're going to be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation. Because if you see a horse and buggy up in the heavens, what is strange about that? Everybody knows what a horse and buggy looks like. So there's the strangeness of the salvation represents that it's going to be something that people are not going to be expecting. And what that would be would be the so-called UFOs, which are the chariots of the Lord. They come, or they're spoken of in many different ways in the scriptures. So it says, and parted them both asunder. So this vehicle in the heavens parted them both asunder. So what made the separation between the two? Well, it's something that Esau calls a particle beam. Is it a particle beam? There's a terminology for it. I believe that's what they call it. Tractor beam. A tractor beam. Which separated the two. All right. Now let's look up that word, parted them. Right. So the word for parted, when we go to it in the Hebrew, is the Hebrew word parad. Right. It says to separate, divide. To be divided, be separated. To make a division, get separated. All right. So how did this separation come? Well, there was, for lack of better words, it was like a light that came down from the chariot and separated the two, separated Elijah from Elisha. All right. And it says, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah what? Went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So there was a separation between the two. And he went up into heaven. Where? Into a chariot, into the same chariot. And how do we know that he went up into the chariot? Because Elisha, and Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. Which is what? The vehicles of the Lord, which are called chariots, marakab, of or from riding, and the horsemen thereof, meaning the angels that were there. This is why when we go to Acts, the 1st chapter and the 8th verse, it says, but you shall receive power after that the Holy Spirit has come upon you. This is Yahushua speaking to the disciples. And you shall be a witness unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. And when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up the same way Elijah was taken up. He was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Right. And then when we go to Revelation chapter 1, it's the same thing. Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with clouds. So Yahushua, when he comes back, is going to come back the same way he left, with the chariots of the Lord. And that's why the angels that were there, it said, and while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, meaning while the disciples were looking up, watching Yahushua going up in this so-called tractor beam, going up where? Into the chariot, behold, 2 men stood by in white apparel, meaning the 2 angels stood by there, which also said, you men of Galilee, why stand you gazing up into heaven? This same Yahushua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven. Right. So he's going to come back the same way that he left. Because what was seen, what Elisha saw was the chariots, or the so-called UFOs, and the angels that were riding in these vehicles. It says, and Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. Meaning the angels that were inside of this vehicle, just like you saw the in Acts, the 1st chapter, how the angels spoke to the disciples which at this point are about to become apostles, and asked them why are they looking up. The same way that you see this man leaving, that's the same way he's coming back. Because the angels ride in vehicles in the heavens, you know. Now, do they have to? No, they don't have to, but they do. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 1 and verse 16. I start at 14. It says, and the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. So these creatures are what? The angels. And as you read further up in the beginning of the chapter, it tells you, it gives it a description that Elijah saw of the angels. So it says that they return and as the appearance. I'm sorry, let me read it again. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. So that's how the chariots move, you know, fast, you know, and they don't have to stop to make turns or anything like that. They don't have to slow down, you know, whatever they call it, the G-force or whatever the case may be. They don't have to do any of those things because, you know, they are of a different, they're made of a different substance than we are. You know, if man was to make maneuvers like this, they will fall apart. All right. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. There was another point that came to mind. Right now, I can't remember what that was. If it comes back, then I'll bring it out. But the angels were inside of these vehicles, these chariots, so-called UFOs, right? It says, now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his four faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl, which is green. Some say yellowish, but when you look up the beryl stone, it's green. And they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Yeah, because that's what he saw. And this is how he described it. The chariot that he saw, this is how he described it. It looked like a wheel inside of another wheel. Now, there's some images that you look at where someone attempted to draw what seems to appear to be, or what's described here in Ezekiel 1 and 16, and it looks like a wheel was inside of another wheel. All right. It says when they went, meaning what? When the chariots went, they went upon their four sides, and they turned not when they went, right? Because they don't have to do maneuvers that men do, because if men try these maneuvers that the chariots do, they'll fall apart. And it just came back, Barak Tehal Bashem Shai. The appearance of lightning, they ran and returned as the appearance of lightning. There was a NASA footage. I forget what it was called, but they show you a chariot moving, and then all of a sudden you see it take off as a flash of lightning. Then after that you see a flash of light, and then you see a laser coming right in the area where the chariot was at, to show you how fast they move. Before Esau could even push the button, the chariot was already gone. They pushed the button, if you saw the flash, and then you see the beam coming. And by that time, the chariot was long gone. That's how they move. And he was going in one direction, and he shot back the other way. No turning. You didn't see it turn around or, you know, make a turn, you know, or slow down to make a turn. It just shot back out the other way. And that's how the chariots maneuver. It says, as for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful. The rings represent the windows, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four, right, which is the windows in the chariots. All right. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. Why? Because they were in there. They were inside of these vehicles, these chariots. This is why Elisha said, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof, meaning the angels are the men that are, because what was a horseman? A horseman was an actual man that rode the horse or was in the chariot, the actual chariot, the horse and buggy, and they were driving, you know, the horse and buggy. Well, in the heavens, the angels are those horsemen that are riding these vehicles, these chariots in the heavens. It says, and he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces. Right, because he was sad because his pretty much his mentor had left. So Ezekiel 119, and when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Why? Because the angels were inside of the chariots. Whithersoever the spirit was to go, they went, thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels, in these chariots, in these vehicles. You know, and this is how they're coming back. This is why Yahweh Shai said when he comes back, he's going to send the angels to the four corners of the earth to gather the elect of the nation of Israel from the four corners of the earth. All right. And another point to make is here in 2 Kings 2:11, it says, and it came to pass as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and the horses of fire, which are the chariots, and parted them both asunder. And what? And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So that's the same thing we read here in Acts 1:9, that Yahweh Shai what? Went up. You know? While they beheld, he was what? Taken up. The same way that Elijah was taken up into the whirlwind. The same way that Enoch was taken up into a whirlwind. Matter of fact, since we speaking about Enoch, let me get this other precept. Let's go to Hebrews, the 11th chapter, and the 5th verse. By faith Enoch was translated, that he should not see death, and was not found, because the Most High translated him from before. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased the Most High. And this story or history or account of Enoch walking with the Most High and being taken up into heaven is pretty much a blueprint for what the Lord is going to do to the elect, the ones that please the Lord, and them being delivered in these times, the same way that Enoch was delivered back then, the same way that Elijah was delivered back then, the same way that Yahweh Shai went up into heaven. All right. And when we look up this word translated, I believe it's the same word in all of them. You know, it could be a little variation to them. But when we look up the word translated, the word there is metatithemi, metatithemi, to transpose two things, one of which is put in place of the other. To transfer, right? So he was transferred or abducted or translated, you know, however you want to slice it. It says, it's right, beautiful. Salaki, I know you brothers are putting some banging precept up. Ecclesiastes 44:16, Enoch pleased the Lord and was translated, being an example of repentance to all generations, which goes hand in hand with what the Spirit just had me say. You know? Psalms 104:3, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. That's right, because the chariots or the clouds are the chariots of the Lord. You know, here it is. He gave man the technology to build airplanes and helicopters and cars and trucks and all that. But the Lord, can't, travel in vehicles if they want. You know, the angels in them. Isaiah 26:20, come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpassed. And this is why, when we read Revelation, the 15th chapter, is either the 15th chapter or the 14th chapter, where it speaks about them that had gotten the victory. Right? They were where? Up above the firmament, looking down on the earth. What were they in? And what did John see coming down from heaven? New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, which were the Israelites coming down, the elect coming down from those chariots back to the earth, glorified, changed, sanctified. All right. So let me see. So he was transferred. Transport. Yep. He was transported, transferred, translated. He went from earth into heaven, into a vehicle. Right? And then we have Revelation 11 and 11. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from the Most High entered into them, which we're at that time now, the truth entering into the elect. And they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them, which is what we're witnessing right now from the enemy. Yeah, well, because he has no understanding. That's why he will say it was an actual mountain. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud. See, come up hither. And they ascended up into heaven in a cloud, meaning in a chariot, and their enemies beheld them. That's why it says that this is the strangeness of the Most High salvation. So they're not gonna, they're not gonna be expecting anything like this to happen. And then Revelation 15:2, and I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on a sea of glass, having the harps of the Most High, because they're going to be in these chariots, looking down upon the earth, and seeing the destruction. I'm going to read this right here. Isaiah 19:1, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift chariot. Yeah. And that swift chariot are these so-called UFOs. And shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Yeah, because they're going to be rattled. They're going to be uneasy because of this great gigantic chariot that Ezekiel spoke about, the wheel within a wheel. He said a fire enfolding within itself, which they showed you in that movie ID4. So these devils know, but it's individuals like this that are not spiritual at all. They know that they're Israelites. They're teaching people that they're Israelites, but their doctrine is a confused doctrine. And he is a false prophet, And now that this thing that they have is going through the stratosphere, that's going to even put more pride upon this individual, So pretty much that was, I just wanted to make a point on that, something that came to my mind earlier. I wanted to do the video earlier, but I wasn't able to, and I just wanted to say a few words. I know, like I said, brothers that have done lessons on this, so I'm pretty sure they probably covered the same topic or the same, point, but I just wanted to give my take on it through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. So Lord's will, you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.